all my X's right up from X's, which is not appropriate for the wedding. But to tell you that.
All right.
Mic check, mic check.
Our last session of PAB presentation. Teams are the best for last, right?
That is correct.
So we have 7 Season Studios going, followed by
Testing.
SciCom Center, and then Wonderlab with Racco. I see just family in the house, so we all know how house go. 15 minutes. Keep an eye on me up to the time, and we'll do Q&A.
Yep.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Hello, we are Team 7 Season Studios, and we are the game pre-production team for Fall 2022. These are instructors, Chris Klug and Ricardo Washington. This is the team. I am Ryan Eckert. This is Justin Yuk, Lachlan Belford, Damien Xie, Yifan Shan, Harry Zhang, and Joy Liu. So, about our project. The goal of 7 Season Studio is to explore the process of creating an original game idea that would attract the interest of potential publishers. This means our primary deliverable is a process that will accumulate in a short 5-minute pitch. This is our metrics matrix. We want to focus on documentation for the design aspects, prototyping, and art style. Next, I'll hand it to Justin to talk about our premise.
Yep. Thanks, Ryan. The premise of our game is when the creature you call home is suffering from a seemingly incurable disease, you try to heal the creature by learning how to communicate with it. Now, the unique aspect of our story is that all of this takes place inside of the creature. And visually, this creature is a giant space whale. Based on our premise, our core narrative conflict is that this creature, our space whale, is afflicted with a cancer-like disease. Much like a malignant tumor, it spreads throughout the whale's body, damaging its organs, its tissues, its nervous systems, corrupting its blood. And our current narrative structure is, once upon a time, a humanoid society built and boarded a sentient spacefaring whale ark in order to help them find a new planet to live on. Every day, the humanoids waited in stasis and waited until the whale ark could find them a new home. But one day, you are awoken from this stasis, and you discover that the whale ark is near death from this spreading disease. And the whale has chosen you to bring it back to health. Next, I will give it to Lachlan to talk about concept generation.
Thanks, Justin. I'm going to talk about the design process that has led us to this point in the semester. So early on in our initial brainstorming, as we were sharing game design we all liked, art styles we all liked, we hit really early on this setting that was exciting to all of us. The idea of setting a game inside of a creature where all of its organs are rendered as these vast natural landscapes for the player to explore. From there, we started asking ourselves what kind of game fits in this setting, what kind of story, what kind of themes. We really liked the idea, or we were exploring the relationship between the player and the creature and realizing it's probably some sort of symbiotic relationship and researching what that could be. And this is where we were at by quarters, basically, where we shared all the ideas we'd been coming up with and actually found out it was really difficult to communicate our idea, communicate what was compelling about it, and especially it was very unclear what the player was doing in this world because we really did not know at that point. So taking all the feedback we got from quarters, we went into the next week ready to iterate and answer these questions. At first, we tried to do this by answering as many questions as we could, as quickly as we could, and in as much detail as we could. So we did things like write really detailed player stories about possible moments in the game. We storyboarded some of them. We wrote lots of backstory, lots of lore. And while this was really helpful in generating a lot of ideas the team was really excited about, it was not leading us toward one central gameplay idea in the way that we hoped that it would. In fact, it was sort of leading us in many unrelated directions. Later, we even realized at this stage we were really avoiding making any difficult decisions about our idea and just trying to fit in everything we could think of. And because we hadn't defined the center of our idea yet, we had no justification for why one detail fit in our world and another did not. So the following week, our instructors really helped us refocus on defining the core of the game first and working outwards from there to fill in the rest of the details. We went back to our themes, picked out verbs, organized them into a loop, but at this point we were still trying to cram too much stuff into one idea. It wasn't becoming concise enough. So based on feedback that this relationship between the player and the creature was one of the most compelling parts of our idea, we said, what if that's what the whole game is about? What would a loop look like that was about building that relationship? And this is where we got to at that stage. We really liked this idea because it communicated a strong theme, but at this point we still didn't know what the player was doing. So we focused in even further on just the verb communicate. What if that's the main action of our game? We were pointed to media that's about communicating with a vast alien mind, like Arrival, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And we decided, well, we're in this giant whale. What if it communicates like through whale song, through this musical language, and it's up to the player to learn this language and learn how to use it. So we restructured our loop so that this musical language is now going to be integral to each step in the loop, to communicating with the creature, but also to navigating the world and finding ways to deal with this illness. And to talk a little bit more about the player's experience with this loop, especially the communication part, I'll give it over to Damien.
Thanks, Lachlan. So because our purpose to looking for some game using music or sound to communicate between the characters and the players. So we found two examples of this kind of game. The first example is we can see the Opus echo of the Star Song, and they visualized all the music and before you play. And the second example is the Wonder Song. They use same game mechanic to communicate between the characters and players. So this part is our soundboard. The first soundtrack is about our nature resonance. So because this space will have a spread disease. So after this place was corrupted, it will become corrupted resonance. After you fix all the problems that the space they have, and they will become the nature resonance. And we use this soundtrack to show our information we want to share to the audience. So this part is the conversation example between our space whale and players. So for this example, you can see the space whale use his way to teach the players how to communicate with them. Like we can see our project is not about building a game, but we created a gray box visualization in Unity to demonstrate the communication. Like here, the whale is teaching the players, and we can learn the new language. They use music instead of using liberal translation. So I think it's an interesting way to communicate. So the next part is the art iteration. I will handle for the event to talk about it.
Thanks, Damien. After conducting visual research and discussing with our design team and instructors multiple times, we have a better understanding of the intent of our gameplay, and we started to do some art concepts, sketches, and color studies based on environments and to see what would happen in our game. And the goal of doing these explorations is not only help the players have a better understanding of our game background, but also we are help them to evoke emotions and help them remember of design pillars. And at the very beginning, we focus more on exploring different shapes and colors of the floating island, food floating island, because the player is supposed to be staying inside of a giant space whale. And then we explored more about landscapes and trying different color arrangements and trying to build the aesthetics of the game we are designing. And During the process of exploration, we went back and forth with our design team and instructors to see which elements reflected on what worked well and what should be improved. Take the mountain design as an example. We first depict the shape of the stomach lining with gastric pits on the mountains, but after discussing with our design team, everyone on the team agreed that the depiction of gastric pits is unappealing and may evoke negative emotions for people. So we decided to do more iterations and reapply the depiction of stomach lining into the design of forest. And this piece, we are trying to show a feeling of mystery, hidden danger, and puzzle for people. And by doing these exploration and art pieces, we are trying to help our design team in further level design and narrative design. And for next part, I will hand it off to Harry.
Thank you, Ivan. So after we finish and create a really solid color study and also large-scale environment illustration, the art team moved the focus into the medium and small-size environmental object creation. Because the design team has given us a lot of solid and abundant information, we can create multiple iterations with different aesthetic style and also unique approach during the exploration phase. And we can see which iteration, as you can see, fit into the large environment that we created. For example, we have vicious creature nest, forest treehouse, and also other approach such as landmark, and also the resource node and other interactive object that the player can interact with. Also, we have some iteration for the residential cluster and also even the township. So overall, we try to create as many iterations as possible to bring up that visual value and also to enrich the world that we're currently building and also give player a more appealing visual experience. Next, I will give Joy to talk about character design.
Thanks, Harry. Our characters are designed with a musical instrument which is wearable and allow them to play a resonance with the crystal panels to communicate with our environment, or we can see our space well. For giving players more freedom and identification, we have male and female characters for players to pick. So far, we have 4 characters, which inspired by the real world music instrument as samples. The first and second characters are inspired by brass and harp. And their wearable communication tools are backpack and chest bag. Our third and fourth character are inspired by chimps and string. And their wearable communication tools are the head accessory and the straw cape. Thanks for listening. Now I hand back to Ryan to talk about next steps.
Thank you, Joy. All right, so let me talk about where the rest of the project is heading for the rest of the semester. So this is our timeline. We've already been through most of our concept generation phase, as well as halfway through our concept clarification phase. So let's look at the second half. We still have 3 weeks left of our concept clarification phase, in which we want to make our game concept, our game idea, really as good as possible. So for the design team, we really want to develop and explore the game mechanics, and we also want to do some narrative exploration as well. Together, these will help accumulate in the level design of one segment, which will help provide direction for future improvement, direction, like iteration, and help refine our ideas that way. For art perspective, we want to continue to evolve our character design as well as our environment design. We also want this to accumulate in the 3D implementation of one area to ensure that our 2D concept art is indeed a good fit for a 3D game. Finally, 2 weeks out from Halves, we want to focus on the presentation of concept to people who are not on our team. From a production standpoint, this means finding out the economics of our game, which includes demographic, marketing, as well as cost to make, and use that in our 5-minute pitch. For our design and art team, we want to focus on style guides, which would be used if a future team were to develop our game into a full product. We're Team 7 Seasons Studios. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and we are open for questions. Questions? Oh, yes. Hi, Dave.
I guess I'm a little confused about the idea of communication. You showed a fairly abstract demo. Is the game pulling away from 3D exploration and going towards a communication game, or are you still going towards like an exploration of a space kind of thing?
It is still a 3D world to explore, and we're exploring ways where playing the music is also integral to the exploring. But in terms of gameplay mechanics, we've focused on thinking about this communication because it's going to be the trickiest part of the thing to convey. So that's the 3D world is still very much part of the plan, but yeah. Yeah. Yeah, in this example, the idea is this is very early on in the game, and the whale's basically just teaching you to follow a call and response because you don't have a way to translate exactly what it's saying to you yet. So the idea of this is teaching you a simple grammar or rules that you will follow forward into the game.
Is the environment entirely inside the whale?
Yes.
So at any point do we see the size of the whale from the outside?
No. The exact details of the plan is still kind of nebulous because we want to focus on this communication first. Currently, the plan is the player never sees the whale from the outside exactly. They might see infographics or might have some maps or glyphs on the walls that indicate that they are in a whale, but the player themselves will never see the exterior of the whale in gameplay. And that is our current idea that's subject to change based on the direction that our game takes when we may or may not pivot. Yeah.
The whale, it's a live whale, or it's not a steampunk version of it. So these figures, people or human-like figures, they're living inside the biodome of the whale. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that is correct.
I don't know if I heard that, but I had the same question as Shirley. I want to see the whale. I want to see it like it's getting better when I'm feeling it, I want to see the whale.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have another one.
Oh, yeah.
How do these people move around inside the whale? Where do they go through the bloodstream or the vessels or what? They live in the stomach?
We are still exploring that. Currently, our idea is that, and Lachlan, Justin, stop me if I say anything that contradicts what you guys are going, but currently the idea is that we're starting off kind of from one point of interaction, that these characters are inside the stomach, they are resonating with one crystal interface in which to communicate with the Leviathan, and then from there we will design outwards to, okay, what are the moments leading up to this point? What are the moments after this point? So we have we have ideas about what we would like to do, about how this character would like to communicate, move around the whale, but we have not landed anything solidly just yet. Yeah.
And I think part of the question was also the idea is that the whale is so large that its interior, the inside of its organs are made of planet-like materials. And that was part of the art exploration is these mountains we drew, they serve the function of the stomach lining of the creature, or that was part of the original exploration. So the world inside, they are, yes, exploring its bloodstream and stuff, but that might be rendered as a river that, we would see on Earth visually and ecologically.
All right, that's time. Thanks, team.
Thank you.
It's on, okay. I have no, how do we do this? We need to present. Hello and welcome. We are SciCom Center. I'm Angelina, and this is the rest of our team. We have Aiden, Dian, Luca, Yuan, and Phoebe. And for this semester, we are working with the ASTC, or Association of Science and Technology Centers. We are creating an interactive experience in the form of a game for their annual conference. We aim to create something that will help ASTC members connect and reconnect with one another, as well as to spark authentic conversation about important critical conversation topics. So very quickly, I just want to give a brief overview of our project, what we are creating. We're aiming to create a game in which guests will exchange information with one another in order to create a possible solution for a problem that is derived from one of our critical conversation topics. I will play a short introduction video to demonstrate our concept. So keeping that in mind, I want to give some background and some context for this product. So it is going to be used at the ASTC 2020 annual conference, which will be held in person this year with roughly 900 to 1,000 attendees, and it will be centered around the theme, Traversing Tomorrow Together. At the conference, attendees will be, can be broadly classified into either museums or non-museums. And we can expect attendees to skew older and consist of mostly experts and leaders in this particular sector. And we want to keep in mind that these people may not necessarily have familiarity with gaming or be attending the conference for the purpose of playing our game. And I would like to pass it on to Phoebe.
Okay, hi. So from transformational framework, we can find some barriers that we need to solve. For example, people tend to communicate with those they already know, or people don't have deep conversation when they talk to strangers, or people don't know who to reach out to, or too shy to reach out to. And so to tackle the problems, we look up some card games, video games, and also we reference some past ETC projects. To mention again that our goal is to give the attendee opportunity to have critical conversation. So we look up some topics that we think might be discussed during the conference. And the topic range from impact of COVID-19 to the role of science engagement organization. And after we got the feedback from our clients, we can further refine the topics. So these are the revised critical conversation topics. In order to fit in the conference theme, Traversing Tomorrow Together, we want to emphasize the topics that can encourage people thinking about the future, such as how to tackle the informal educational in digital age. These are the feedbacks that we got from Quarter, and there are three. First, our gameplay mechanism should be simple. And second, we have to try to avoid using the small cards because it is easy to be ignored. And using a bat would be a better option. And third, we have to also try to avoid using the big screen because it might be a distraction. And I'll pass on to Aiden to talk about
Thank you, Phoebe.
the design.
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk about the design iteration of our project. And our first idea is focusing on big screen. Phoebe just talked about why we discussed this idea. And our second idea is using the Keynet. However, there are too many attendees at the conference, and our client wished to get most of them to participate in the game. That's what which brings us to the current idea. So I'm going to briefly introduce the process of our experience. Firstly, the attendee will get a badge from the registration area, and there are 3 different colors of the badge. And then they can click the link at the STC app to start the game, and they will get a puzzle at first. So what does the puzzle look like? I will pick a more specific example to explain. And in this puzzle, the attendee will get a task about how to attract more young adults to the science museum. And basically, they need to pick 4 interesting projects for the museum. And people with different colors badge will have different hints. For people with a blue badge, the hint would be like young adults, many young adults like wine. So he would know that maybe a project about winemaking would be interested for them. And also, in the instruction panel, we will guide the players to the prompt spot area to find more information. So the next step is in the prompt spot area. In this area, there is a lot of information about the puzzle topic. So, but some of the information will be the real hints, but the others are not. So people need to gather together to discuss which information will be the hint and the other not. And another really important function of the prompt spot area is it's an easy place to find other players to exchange their hints for the game. And finally, when they solve this puzzle, they will get a score to decide whether they can get a reward or not. We chose the lanyard of the badge for the reward because we think the lanyard of the badge would make the winner stand out in the crowd, and also it could attract more attendees into the game. Yep. Then I will hand out to Jingyuan to talk.
Thank you, Aiden. So for possible delivery methods, our first option is to create a digital game using HTML5 game engines such as Coco's Creator, and we'll put it on the web so that our players can either scan the QR code or click the link on ASTC app to enter the game. And we will also have the physical version. And it is a board game, including cards and stickers, and it will have the same game mechanic. And in our early stage of playtesting, we will use this physical version because paper prototype is easier to access and easier to make. But our digital version is under developing right now, and it is more likely that we would go digital. But the final delivery form depends on our playtesting data. So like Phoebe mentioned, we have several barriers, and we figured out some ideas for those barriers. And the first one is that we would use colored badges, and the color of the badge stands for different information and hints given to the players. So this is designed for barriers of unfamiliarity and access, because the players will quickly locate other players that have the information that they need. And the other is that we use prompt spot to gather players into a certain location. And this is aiming to solve the barriers of relevance and fear. Because by doing so, players will not be afraid of reaching out to other players in the prompt spot, because all of the attendees in here is engaging in this game. And now I'll pass to Dian.
For our game art, we will make it follow our conference theme, which is traversing tomorrow together. The aesthetics will emphasize several keywords like the future, hope, cooperation, and the education. So the overall tone of art is positive and warm. So here is the art mood board. The vector art will be applied in the 2D art part, like the cover of the badge or some graphics in our game content. And also, we will use the low poly style to clearly convey our
game content due to the game performance in the possible platforms. And also, we will use the futuristic style to bring the feel of like encouragement and hope, which match with our theme well. Our game view will be top-down, so it allows players to see the entire area very clearly and decide how to place the items. So these are our concept sketches. We created some 2D images for the 3D assets references. These are our art assets in programs. It includes some exhibits like the White Booth robots, Brock exhibition, and the motto. This video shows the potential layout of one of our puzzles. Now I'm gonna pass on to Luca to talk about plan.
Thank you. So for the playtesting plan, we will gather internal testers, including ETC students and also faculty members, and we will also find other members in CMU. And in early April, we will have a larger playtesting session, including naive guests to better simulating the real conference experience. And for our resources, we are thinking about getting badges and also posters to set up those prompt spots. And we need the help from the client to help us set up the booths and prompt spots, and also have the game link from their official app. And we potentially need a server and stickers, but that depends on the direction of this project going. And in this semester, we also have some design challenges facing. The first one is, like we mentioned before, so most of the SDC conference attendees, they are not expected to play a game. So we will figure out how to better attracting the players to participate in this experience. And also for the play testing part, we will try to better simulating the real conference experience so we can test bestly how the people interact with the others. And we will also think about the trade-off of the simplicity of the mechanic and also the deeper conversations. Because for each session, we only have 10 to 15 minutes between this session to play the game. And we will also make the deliverable more accessible and easier to set up without our technical support, because the conference will be at the end of the September. And we also need to figure out the distraction of the phone screen, because the experience will be based on mobile platform. So for the rest of semester, at the end of the week 9, we will have our first functional app done. And we will continue prototyping and playtesting to better figure out the previous challenge we talked about. To sum up, SciCom Center is an experience based on conference, ASTC 2022 conference, and the player will exchange information and solve a puzzle together to better talk about the conversation topics. Thank you.
Is there a worry that it'll be too loud with everybody all talking at once at the prompt spots? Like, is there a distance enough away from the next prompt spot?
We will have several prompt spots in the exhibit hall, and we have find like the exhibit hall in the center is really huge, so it should be enough space to have all the attendees to talk about and have discussions. So, yeah.
I really like the goal of sparking authentic conversations. I like the way you identify barriers. I'm kind of curious, how will you recognize people having authentic conversations in your playtest? What would that look like?
We will using survey and also collecting the data from the app to define if they have the
authentic conversation. Because with our own understanding of authentic conversation, it's like, are they really talk about those critical conversation topics, or they are just try to solve the puzzle itself? So with the survey and also the discussion with playtesters, we can figure out how they interact with the other players.
So basically, it would also be that we would want to see people when they're saying like, what should we put in our little museum exhibit we're designing? We want to see them discuss like, hey, maybe I think like kids' blocks are great, or like I think robots are great, and we want to see them discuss about like, why they're putting this in there, and in favor of this versus the other, as opposed to like, let's just put this in there and get this over with.
Thank you. Yeah, Dave.
I may have missed it. You talked about playtesting. How soon and how much access do you have to the type of attendees of this conference? Because it feels like those conversations will really only happen with the people who are taking this conference. Like ETC students won't have those conversations. I'm curious, how are you going to get access to them to playtest?
So that's a good question. So first, we have those conversation topics, and they are interacted to the game puzzle itself. So for example, in the attracting teenagers to play the game, to the museum, the players will need to figure out how to place those items and in the exhibit hall to attract the young people. And for that, they will talk about their decisions. So for that, they can then talk about those conversation topics. And with the result, we can see how the whole thing's going.
I also know that when we talked with our client, the ASTC, there were some discussion about possibly putting us in contact with either the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh or the Carnegie Science Center to see if any of their staff would be willing to help us with playtesting. Yep. Members of their staff are also willing to, they were also going to see if any of them were willing to help out.
Yeah, so we will have students and faculties to help us test the mechanics and the puzzles. And we will potentially have the opportunity to test the whole experience in a real conference or science museum. So yeah, that's our plan.
Time for one more.
Sorry, can you? Oh, Android. The thing is, like, the reason we are thinking about have a web app is because having the kind of app able to download is really difficult in a conference experience, because most people won't really download the app in a conference. And also, the web app is more accessible. So that's the reason we choose HTML5. So which either iOS or Android app, Android phone, you can open the link by scan the QR code, or either you'll see their official app. So you don't need to download anything in the conference.
All right, thanks, team.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. We're Team Honor Lab, and this is our half presentation. So we're a team of 7 ETC students. Today we have Wish, Dennis, Yuchan, my name is Xingyu, Muru, Laurie, and Xingyi. Our faculty advisors are Chris and Shirley, and our clients are Ian and Adam from Gift Kids World Village. So Give Kids the World Village is a nonprofit resort in Central Florida that provides critically ill wish kids and their families a week-long vacation at no cost. So our mission is to define a location-based platform inside the village and create a themed entertainment experience for wish kids and their families who are staying at the village. So our exact deliverables are a proof of concept experience and a complete design package that supports the installation, and also all the documentation of playtests we conducted along the way. So let's talk about our venue a little bit. This year, Give Kids the World Village is repackaging one of their existing facilities into a fun and interactive space with the theme of science and technology. It's called Mayor Clayton's Wonder Lab. So the construction is actually under progress at the moment, and you will be done in 6 months. So inside the space, there's a room called the Game Portal. It's a circular room equipped with spatial sound and projection map walls. And this is planned to be the venue that our experience will be installed in once the building is complete. So we're starting with a very open-ended prompt, just working on experience that can be installed in the room. And we feel like part of our challenge is to work with our client to really figure out how to narrow it down to come up with the exact experience. So we started up with background research with the help from ECC faculty Mike and Brian. We collected all the previous ETC projects with Give Kids the World to really figure out what has been done before and learn about our client, what's the culture of the village. So the next step we took is come up with 3 drastically different broad ideas and pitch to our client to know what they like and don't like. So our takeaways here are they really like the multi-user experience so that more people can enjoy. They really like the problem-solving aspect, and they really like the physical controllers as an addition, and they like less linear experience so that people can join in the middle. So next step we took is we actually know the direction we're going with for experience. Now let's figure out the story. So we traveled down to Florida to visit our client, just to get to see what's inside the village, learn about all the characters and narratives, and something we gained along the way is our client would really love us to incorporate what's existing in the village so that kids can also learn about them. So they also have existing IP available to support us. So after coming back, we actually took all the inspirations we got and come up with 2 very concrete ideas, each with a paper prototype. We have an interactive playground idea. We have a train repairing idea. And we pitched again to our client. This time, our main takeaways are they really like the train building idea because the space is a maker space, so that fits into the theme. But they really also want us to focus a lot on the exploration side so that there's no right answer to a puzzle and everyone can enjoy it without feeling frustrated. So taking those first steps, we really collected a lot of materials and inspirations, and we feel like it's time for us to come up with the final idea. And I'll pass it on to Yushan to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks, Jingyu. So in this project, our experience is we are developing a modular train building experience for kids that they can build their own train and actually test them out in the virtual environment. And so here is a briefly walkthrough. So you can see here the wish kids go inside the circular room from the store. And each of them get a Wonderlab chip like this, and which this Wonderlab chip can tap on each of the benches. In the first 3 benches, each of them representing different tasks that they can do with the train. And like once they tap on the little Wonderlab chip to this yellow button, it will activate the accordingly experience of the benches. And it will also automatically save and store information and save changes to the next benches. We have a recommendation routine like this. The red arrow is the direction, but there's no limitation that you need to follow them. You need to follow us, so you can go either way. And after you experience the 3 benches, the last bench is the simulation station that you actually can test out your running train here virtually, and also later on you get a souvenir. Okay, so here's our experience breakdown. So you can see the gear station, the whistle station, the color station, and also last, the test environment, also known as the simulation station. So let's talk about it in detail. So the first interaction is our gear gear station. So it's here where kids can design the power factor of the train by selecting a combination of different sizes of gear. Here's the button layout. So you can see here we have small, medium, and large button that you can press on to select gears. And if you want to delete one of them, you can press the undo button. And if you finish all of this, you press the done button. Here's a little animation of the different possibilities that you can arrange different sizes of gear. Yeah, and here's the second interaction where kids gonna design a train whistle by picking the instrument and also recording a short melody. And the button here is the little MIDI keyboard, and you gotta select different whistle instrument, and yeah, like this. Let's move on to the third interaction. So the third interaction is which kids can design the visual and the appearance of the train by changing the RGB colors, like by sliding the RGB color sliders here, shown in the picture. And also they can click and choose by using the train part selector as a joystick. Here's also a illustration showing. Yeah. So then I'll pass on to Xingyi to talk about our final simulation.
Hello, everyone. So our final simulation is here to design for our Wish kids to see what they're designed previously as for the previous 3 stations, to visualize the train and to have a virtual mini Give Kids a World Village test track incorporate with them to see how their train works on the tracks. So so when you tap your RFID sensor in, your data will be loaded, and there's a button in the center that you can tap to whistle your train, and that can also be visualized and listened while your train is running. So there are some visualization interactions that we designed for you to visualize your color, your gear design, and your whistle design. So the color design is pretty obvious when you see your train running around the track. But the gear design, really, the high gear ratio and low gear ratio will affect the speed of your train. So when your train goes really fast with the high gear ratio, it will go past the pivoted bridge, like the bridge won't be pivoted. But when you have a very, very slow speed, the bridge will actually be pivoted to the lower track, so your train will go to the different track. That will affect your train's path while you're running it, which will lead to an iteration of our whole process. And also, when we like to show how your visual design affect our final simulation, you will actually see that when your train is passing through some of the attractions that Give Kids a World attractions in the final simulation design, you can tap the whistle button, and the whistle will showing, and the attraction will have some kind of interaction with your whistle. So next we'll pass to Wish to talk about our interaction development.
Thanks, Xingyi. Now let's dive into the technical part. So in WonderLab, we want to make our experience fun, intuitive, and easy to access. After some research, we explored 3 different platforms: Vive trackers, Kinect, and the mountain controls. All of them work well on our side. However, we can foresee some issue may happen in the future. For the Vive trackers, we can successfully map the motion in front of a screen to the actual gameplay objects. And one more takeaway in this test is that we can simulate our experience inside the VR world. It helps us to get a sense of the real space, real scale of the space. And however, each time when the tracker is reconnected to the sensors, the ID of the tracker will change, which makes it really hard for us to keep track of the guest data from stage to stage. And also, if the kids accidentally drop the trackers, those are quite easy to break. So, and for the Kinect, the biggest issue is that we may not be able to deliver a reliable system within the semester. It's simply because we cannot really access to the building. It is still under the construction. So it is hard to train a model or refine a model without the real environment settings. For instance, the lighting or the background may affect a lot to the accuracy. So with that, we ended up choosing the mounted controls and the RFID. We identify our guests by the RFID cards, and they can simply interact with our experience by the physical inputs, such as the buttons and the sliders we will introduce later. And next, I'll pass to Muru to talk about our prototype.
Thanks, Wish. So the white buttons at the bottom part is simulating the RFID sensors. So if you click new button, and it will generate a new idea. And when you click the idea on every window, the trains will go to the window that you choose. And the trains will go in any order. So temporarily, our color modifying UIs are on the fourth window because that's what we use for simulating the color modifying sliders. And eventually, the fourth window will be a trail, and the train will go along the trail. And so far, we currently made the gear size choosing and the color modifying parts, and we will have sound design part, and we might change the window order after we playtest and after the new design according to the playtest. And we also made the function that 3 kids can control their own trains. And I'm going to pass it to Tongzhou to introduce the 3D art.
Thanks, Muru. So now I'm going to talk about the art style of our project. Sorry. So what we have right now, we are trying to combine 2 different styles. The first one is science fiction style, and we are combining science fiction with the cartooning style. And so right now we have high fidelity models that resemble to the real train in the village. And we are also trying to match the color palette in the Wonder Lab to fit the Wonder Lab interior design. And additionally, we also have the science-inspired aesthetics to reflect the theme of the buildings. And here is the concept art of our project. So the picture on your left side is the overall view of our project environment. And the 2 photos on the right side are showing the details of the 2 controlling station of the environment. And so right now we are still testing different kind of color combinations in order to get the best result of our environment. And next, I will pass it to Laurie.
All right, thanks, Dennis. I'm going to be talking about the physical prototypes that we've done. So in physical prototyping, we really wanted to investigate 3 different key things. The first of these was the table design. Since we're going to be actually designing a table to be installed in the space, we really want to make sure that it's accessible for our entire audience. We want to make sure that it's comfortable in terms of height, size, scale, and placement of buttons. We also want to determine preferences during playtesting, so we need that physical structure to be able to playtest with. Secondly, we wanted to investigate the physical electrical components, meaning we want to make sure that our electrical components interface with Arduino as we expect. And we also want to more closely resemble our final experience once we are finished with playtesting. Finally, we want to paper prototype the different portions of the experience since we're able to iterate more quickly over paper, and we were able to conduct internal playtests at the ETC using those paper prototypes. Here's a couple examples of our electrical prototypes, the first of these being the RGB slider for our 3rd portion of the experience, and secondly, the RFID the RFID tag interfacing with our computers. So in terms of playtesting, we conducted an internal playtest at the ETC, and we really established 3 key things from that playtest. The first of these is that people prefer a larger experience, or larger playing surface. They kind of like that experience of being in control, even if they're only interacting with a small portion of it. Secondly, for the final simulation stage, they really liked being able to see their train from a 3rd-person perspective, really seeing the consequences of their choices. And finally, they really wanted to have a souvenir, kind of a tangible component, whether that be a paper printout of their train or a kind of photo booth experience. Going forward, we're currently working with John Baelish to set up playtests every 2 weeks with our target audience, meaning 7 to 11-year-olds. So looking forward, this is kind of an overview of our timeline. Like I said, playtesting every 2 weeks. The first half of the semester was really brainstorming and narrowing our scope, really figuring out what our platform was going to be. And now going forward, we're going to be in full playtesting mode. So quickly, here's an overall summary of our experience. And we thank you for listening, and we are now open to questions. Yeah, Eugene.
I know this is really out of scope, but I think social is something really important. Given like an ideal circumstance, do you have any ideas on ways that people who go through the experience could have their trains like have their trains interact with each other, either directly or indirectly?
So we did actually, our very first experience was that you would be working together, perhaps as a family unit, to combine and like make one train, such that you would have one person at each station at a time. Talking with our clients, they really like the idea of kind of each child being able to put their mark on that train. Perhaps in the future, there would be something where you could interface individual trains at the end, but yes, it's out of scope for us.
Awesome concept. I love it a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave?
I'm kind of curious about what you need to deliver by the end of the semester. So this is currently being built, the building, and this space is sort of being built as part of that. This is being installed in that potential space in the future, correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
What does your client need from you at the end of the semester to be able to execute on that on their own?
So the deliverable for us is kind of twofold. First of all, it's a full design documentation with prescribed hardware and software documentation that we will be delivering to them at the end of our experience. And then the secondary thing is kind of giving them a design. I shouldn't say secondary, but the second thing we're giving them is a full, complete design to put in that kind of space. What their goal is, hopefully in the future, is to actually use our kind of platform as a platform for future developers to make in that space. So it's kind of twofold, prescribing the platform and documenting it, and then creating a kind of preliminary experience.
Is your description for the hardware implementation, or will that be sourced out something more industrial?
So we will be prescribing the hardware, but not necessarily designing the whole system. There's actually a design team called Megami that is working on the space kind of as a whole. And so we've been talking a lot with them to figure out exactly what we're responsible for. Yeah, Dave?
The platform. So you've got what seems like a very custom hardware installation in terms of like the buttons. Is the idea, is that part of the generalized platform, or is the idea that that would be taken out and a new installation be put in that space, but there would be a more central core platform that's part of that?
So for the table design, we are actually hoping to have kind of removable panels that go in each of the table. And so those panels would have our button interfaces on them, but then could be removed and connected to a different kind of platform. So if you wanted to replace it with screens, you could remove our platform kind of with leaving the table itself there, but then just take out that insert and put in a new one.
Time for one more?
Yeah.
Plays into that. What if you just had a digital entry for the 4 different workstations, 4 different areas? Have you thought through that? And is maybe that what you're going to prototype and play test this semester?
Do you want to talk about that?
So our hope is we can start with the digital prototype and prove that our concept is working purely in digital space. We're prototyping with also Arduino to prototype out like the mapped control. But our final hope is that our experience will be part digital and part physical, but we'll provide the complete documentation for all the physical needs.
And so speaking to the part of whether it would make more sense to just make it entirely digital, a lot of the point of the Wonder Lab space is that it's very hands-on, that it's very kind of tactile. And so we wanted to lean into that, and that's something that our client also requested that we look into.